Steve Massaro. I'm the Vice President of Solution Strategy here at Pure IT, and I'm thankful and honored to be here talking to you today. Pure IT is a QSO that services credit unions nationwide of all sizes, and we help them all the way from understanding their current technological and operational state to providing a vision for a future and a strategy for a future operational and technological state. We have a very productive PMO department that does implementations for credit unions in a supportive and assistive way. And then we have a fantastic managed services team that can help offload some duties from stressed IT teams so that they can focus on what's really important for credit unions. So again, thank you for being here. Today, I'm going to talk about cloud and adoption and some of the turbulence and stuff that's been going on technologically in the credit union space. I'm going to share my little PowerPoint presentation with you here. Let's take a look. There we go. Here we go. Navigating the cloud, strategies for credit unions. So I'm going to start off with the most basic consideration here. What is the cloud? We hear that term thrown around everywhere, all over the place, all the time. Another one that's coming around the corner is AI. That's another webinar. But we're going to talk about cloud. And what is that? Well, to be honest, it's a buzzword, but it's a noun and or even an adjective a little bit. What it really describes is systems or technical operations that exist outside of your building or your data center. So it's a cloudy term in itself. From the perspective of this conversation, we're going to discuss cloud ecosystems, which are provided by the big three right now. That would be Google, AWS, and Microsoft, or Amazon and Microsoft. And we're probably going to focus a little bit on Microsoft because that's the most applicable right now to the credit union space, although there is a spot for AWS and even Google Compute to be included in that. People have different emotional expressions when they hear the word cloud. Some organizations are they want to adopt the cloud. Some are distressed by a little bit or concerned or scared. And I believe that stems from the nebulous and lack of understanding surrounding it. But to be honest, whether we like it or not, most of us are probably already using it. We already have services that are hosted outside of our brick and mortar buildings or our data center and by other providers, software as a service providers. Sometimes our cores are hosted. We'll talk a little bit about Microsoft 365, but chances are a lot of you already leverage Microsoft 365, whether it's just for your email or you branched out into file storage, collaboration, some of the other features that come with it. So just be aware that it is not something to either love or hate. It's a tool. And the success or failure that you experience from that is defined by how well you use the tool and how closely you're applying it to its meant usage. So anyway, just to kind of demystify the cloud a little bit for you. Sorry, dad joke. Why does it matter for us? Why do we care right now in the credit union space? Inside of our building, we say that we don't get to decide where technology flows. We can either choose to ride with the current or to try and swim against it. And it's very difficult to swim against the current of technology. There's a lot of pressure that gets placed on us as a technological provider, you as a technological user and experiencer, that makes swimming against that current sometimes very non-functional and very expensive. And the current today, whether we like it or not, is taking us outside of our brick and mortar buildings and into, again, the cloud, hosted environments. One of the most maybe front of mind situations right now for people is the acquisition of VMware by Broadcom and the changes that they've made to their business structure and the impact that it's having on, I'm going to say, even large institutions all the way down to small institutions. What used to be a very prevalent and prominent and successful and usable tool for for the credit union industry, organizations like ours, and even organizations globally. Um, that system has been damaged. The cost of licensing VMware products in some cases has tripled or quadrupled or more. There's a lot of uncertainty, and that's a big word surrounding how that we're going to be able to leverage that in our organizations and trust that it's going to be the same over time. And so what used to be either cost parity, migrating your systems to a cloud versus keeping it on premises with a virtualization tool like VMware, has now shifted toward cloud solutions being more cost advantageous. But they are not only cost advantageous. We'll go over that in a little while also. Another reason why it matters is security. And man, that's another nebulous term. It just encompasses everything that we do and see today. We have to be secure in everything that we do, from locking our car doors, our front doors, our windows, all the way to protecting our members' PII. I mean, everything. But we do our best to secure individual systems all over the place. We acquire these tools and these solutions, and then we go, okay, well, how do we secure it? So we secure it. And something that gets lost in this is the fact that most breaches, most security events don't actually happen when somebody gets through that security bubble that you've wrapped around those particular products. It happens in the gap in between. And by properly leveraging cloud ecosystems, these larger scale systems, their security umbrella covers the whole thing. And so there are fewer gaps. And it becomes much easier to properly leverage security, properly implement it, and you can feel a lot more comfortable that you have security solutions in place that cover the entirety of your operation. Again, we go into economic considerations right there. Hardware prices going through the roof. Licensing costs going through the roof. Virtualization costs going through the roof. And then a lot of providers of the specific applications and technologies now are starting to charge premiums against migrating or against self-hosting their solutions. And the reason why they're doing that is every self-hosted solution is different than each other one. And so their support team has to be knowledgeable just about their solution, but about hundreds or maybe thousands of different implementation methodologies that people have for it. And it increases the staffing costs and people costs of these organizations and training costs. And so they're starting to charge more for self-hosted solutions. Whereas a cloud-hosted solution, in other words, something that they control in their data center and their environment, requires a much smaller administrative maintenance, repair, and support team. So those are some economic considerations. Another economic consideration, and we're going to see it in the next slide, is what we call the network effect and the cost benefit you gain from taking all of these disparate solutions and combining them into one really powerful solution. And with that, we'll go to the network effect. How does cloud enable the network effect? What do you mean network effect? What is that? What is that word? The network effect is when you gain emergent properties and abilities from disparate systems being combined into single systems. And it's a very amazing and very powerful thing operationally, internally for teams. So much time is spent when we have this solution by this provider, and that solution by that provider, and that solution by that provider. And we find ourselves working as translators, translating the information out of one and putting it into another, and then out of that one and putting it into another. And when Nicholas was talking from Clutch about a frictionless experience, an incredible amount of friction occurs in that translation from one system to another. And a lot of error happens also. But you also lose clarity and visibility and perspective on what the source of truth is for any particular piece of information. In large organizations, there's a technology called master data management. And what master data management is it becomes the source of truth and operational software for that entire organization. So they might have multiple different tools, but their user base only enters the information into one tool, that master data management management tool, and then it controls what happens in all of their other things. So they have a single source of truth and a single operating environment. The downside for most of us that live out of the city in the clouds there, and not in a Fortune 10 or a Fortune 100 company, is master data management has been in the past too expensive for us to build and maintain. And so we're left with all these different solutions. Good news. Modern cloud environments like Microsoft 365, and that's what I'm going to focus on. But when I talk ecosystems, I also mean Azure, AWS, Google Compute Cloud. But like Microsoft 365, by their nature, are in a sense expressions of master data management. They combine, in this case, I've got my little bubble circle here, communication, collaboration, security, compliance, and management with Microsoft 365. What does that mean? Well, communication, email, Outlook. 365 gives you the most powerful industry standard email system for many, many years, Microsoft Exchange. Is that it? Is that all the communication we get? Nope. We get Microsoft Teams, which is very quickly also becoming a standard platform for intra-organization communication, and even outside of the organization communication in the forms of events like this, webinars and things like that. It is very, very powerful. Teams is very powerful. So that's communication. Teams is also collaboration. And that emerges because of that network effect. So Teams isn't just for many of us, we just use Teams for chatting between teammates. But thank you, Microsoft, for this. But if you leverage Teams within Teams, it becomes a collaborative platform for file sharing, scheduling, planning, project management, so much more. Very, very powerful. And that leverages SharePoint, another system that sits outside, and Planner and Tasks, another system that sits outside. Teams is also covered by Microsoft Defender. So is Outlook. And that's that security umbrella covering that ecosystem. So you're starting to see it. And then if we look into security, we'll go in again to Microsoft Defender. Included with Microsoft 365, you get protection for your workstation, protection for your servers, protection for your email system, protection for your data. Compliance. It's integrated into Outlook, Teams, all of it. Microsoft has DLP. That's a system that we in this industry used to pay a lot of money for somebody to just for the solution, let alone somebody to implement it. Outside of it, it had to be connected into the Exchange server and properly leveraged and things like that. It was very complicated and very difficult. Microsoft Purview, built in, and it doesn't just cover email. DLP used to cover email primarily. Well, now it covers email, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams chats and communications. Any way that somebody could, whether it's accidental or malicious, exfiltrate protected information from our organizations, that system protects against those kind of events happenings and alerts us to whenever they potentially could have happened. Same thing with data classification, another very expensive option, built in, part of the deal, bring it in. Management, and this is kind of full circle here, that master data management system. When you create a user in a cloud ecosystem like Microsoft 365, that user gets created in email, in Teams, they get measured against by security, all the collapsed SharePoint, OneDrive, their access to the various resources, all of it can be controlled from one pane of glass. From a management perspective, whether that management is handled by an internal IT team on your side or by a company like ours that assists with that, it makes it easier and cheaper. And that's relevant to us all right now. We're all looking for those cost savings. But another type of cost savings is operational efficiency. And you gain that operational efficiency just the same with having all of these systems be in one place. Instead of creating a user in your Active Directory, in your email system, in your SharePoint system, or your file system, various different bits and pieces, you create it in one place, one time. You apply them to groups, they get their access and controls done in there all in one place. So very, very powerful. The emergent expressions. Visibility is a big deal here as well. You get a lot of visibility when you have it all in one bubble. If we go outside, and Microsoft 365 is probably the quickest win for credit unions today, for them to fully leverage that tool to gain the benefit, to gain that network effect from cloud technology. Once you've fully utilized a system like that, you start journeying down a conversation of, okay, I'm into this ecosystem now. How do I offload some of the on-premise equipment that I have and some of the, the servers that I have, the server workloads? Because now VMware, we were just talking about VMware, they want to charge us 3-4 times as much money for licensing. And the hardware that cost me this much yesterday cost me that much today. How do I get out of that business? We really don't want to be mechanics anyway. We want to work on the how technology can enhance operational efficiency. It can enhance the teams, because the downstream effect of that is enhancing the member experience, making it feel more frictionless. And so by getting ourselves out of that, migrating stuff to a cloud environment like Azure, you gain another network effect. You free up time for your staff and your team or your managed service provider, whoever it is, to go and handle more operational things, to make impactful changes instead of just keeping systems running. That used to be, like I said, on about cost parity with traditional hypervisor systems like VMware. Now it's a cost benefit. So you gain operational efficiency and you save money. That's a win-win, and oftentimes a no-brainer. Again, quick wins. Let's talk about quick wins. I'm sure that a portion of you are already in Microsoft 365. It is, to a certain extent, the technological foundation for business operation of the future. If you're not in 365 today, you probably will be, or even should be right now. You should consider that. You should look at what it can deliver to your organization and understand it, what it's going to take. But right now, you can deploy communications, email, Teams, even replace your phone system for smaller organizations. But really, email and Teams, quick wins. Microsoft Exchange servers getting expensive to purchase, implement, and maintain. There is a cost savings right now to moving your email into Microsoft 365 if you're not there right now. Again, operational efficiency and cost savings, no brainer. Email migrations are not that hard, not that costly. It's worth going down. Microsoft Teams for internal collaboration. Email is still important to us in this industry. However, email is the single most dangerous environment in computing today. If you talk to our CISO team or any security professional today, and you say, what's the most dangerous thing that I could do in computing? And they will likely tell you some variation of, well, spend your whole day in email. You're just getting grenades thrown at you all day long, and all you got to do is one bad click. And that's a mistake, very costly mistake. Business email compromise is garbage. So how do we solve that? How do we fight against that? Well, to a certain extent, the answer is relatively simple. Don't leverage email all day, every day. Find other platforms of communication and collaboration. Teams is another platform for communication and collaboration, and it's a fantastic one. We use it all day long inside of Pure IT, and our customer base uses it all day long in theirs, and they love it. So if you're not already in Teams, it's something you should check out. And if you want some understanding on how you can leverage it productively and powerfully, come and talk to us. We can help you implement that and leverage that properly. Collaborative systems, SharePoint, OneDrive, Loop. What are these things? Collaboration is an extension of communication. Communication is just talking back and forth. Collaboration is doing back and forth. Very powerful, very operationally powerful. SharePoint is a modern visualization of what a file system used to be. And similarly with OneDrive. The way people, I'm aging myself a little bit. When I started with computers, it was files and folders, and that was data. And collaboration over time, well, we'd share those things. Well, if I had mine open, somebody else can't open it. And then, maybe I'd have to pick up the phone and hold my cell phone to my ear and say, hey, I got this file spreadsheet you made open. Can you tell me what's going on here? And they're going, well, this column means this and that means that. And it's tedious and painful. It's not efficient. Properly leveraging systems like Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, you can have a meeting with a person. You're looking at their face. You are having a conversation with them. You can have the spreadsheet open in front of you, and both of you can be working on it at the same time. Explanations can happen, descriptions. You get the creative and innovative emergence of two people working together at one time. Awesome, powerful stuff. Microsoft 365, a fantastic platform for transforming you from, can you explain this column to me, to let's work together and make this awesome. Very, very cool stuff. SharePoint is for sharing internally amongst your people. OneDrive is for one. It's for you. It's actually built on the same platform. If you leverage OneDrive right now with Microsoft 365, the data actually sits in SharePoint. It's just focused on you. It's your personal data store. Yes, you can share stuff outside a little bit, but its primary function is to hold your information. Loop. Loop is another collaborative and documentation type platform. It's pretty new. It's pretty neat. If any of you have experience with OneNote, which I've actually used extensively in my career, Loop is a modern expression of what OneNote could be. It's hard to think that OneNote is almost 25 years old right now. That's kind of scary to think. Again, I'm aging myself a little bit there, but Loop is an expression of what a modern visualization of like that can be. And you can put Loop little bubbles of information, communication, collaboration inside of all kinds of things, Teams, emails, everywhere. Very powerful tool. Identity and authentication. One of the pains of our existence today is you have to have a login and password for like 75 different things. Some of them want you to use two-factor on your phone. Some of them are little YubiKeys. Some of them have, and even then you get different authenticator apps. Do I use Duo or Authy or Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator? What do I use? Okay, and then okay, and I got to keep track of these passwords and all that. What we end up with is simple passwords that people can actually remember dozens of, which makes them more prone to being assaulted. And variances in the level of security associated with each particular login because they leverage different authentication methods and ways that they can be accessed. With Microsoft 365, you can engage things like SSO, single sign-on, and SCIM, which is a provisioning tool, so that when you create a user in 365 and you add them to a group, the SCIM system will automatically license them for the appropriate tool in their role and then give them appropriate levels of access. And then SSO will allow them to use the username and password and multi-factor authentication and conditional access policies that you have in place for 365 to get into those external tools. So you can far simplify the user experience and simplify the administration management that your IT team, whether it's a provider like us or internally for you, has to go through in order to manage all those different applications. It's just one login and one password and one multi-factor authentication method for everything. Security and compliance. Wow. We got into this business to serve members, a lot of us, and to help people. None of us really wanted to be security guards. I know I didn't. But it's what's required of us right now. We don't have a choice. That's the way that we serve our members. Part of it is we've got to keep them safe. And it's really, really, really hard to keep people safe when you have your information in 20 different places and you have to figure out how to secure each of 20 different places. And then you've got to constantly measure that and report on that. If they're all in one place and you have one umbrella system that supplies security, an umbrella of security over everything, and compliance, measurement, and controls over it, wow, does that become easier? And it's not just easier, it's better. Because, and what I mean by that is you're actually able to engage it to a higher degree with the time that's available to us. Because we only have to configure one thing instead of 10, 12. We can do a better job of it, and it will be more constructive and complete in its expression. So very, very cool stuff. All right. So you've listened to me mumble for 25 minutes. And for those of you that are awake, you're asking yourself, okay, well, thanks for telling me the cloud's great. How do I do that? And just give me what do I ask? How do I even get started with this? There are 3 places here that you need to ask questions of. And these can be pretty important. And some of these might be obvious to you. How much does it cost? That's pretty good. How hard is this going to be to do? Well, yeah, okay. Those are important questions that you can probably come up with on your own. But I'm going to actually start at the bottom of these bullets here. And I'm going to say that the first set of questions you have to ask is of your credit union, of your organization. For those of you that are awake and interested, Steve talks a good talk. But are we really ready for this? That's something that you need to assess and understand. And if you're scared and don't really know how to understand and assess that properly, we can help you with that. You also need to understand that maybe what you'll discover is only a portion of what you had is suitable for migration to the cloud. Only a portion of it, even if it could be moved, should be moved. And so you need to ask, well, what should I move? What can be moved and is a lower level of that? What should be moved? Um, and then you kind of branch out from there. Um, Microsoft has what they call the cloud adoption framework, and there's some fundamental principles in that, but they're really the fundamental principles of performing any action in your life, any action. It should be strategized, it should be planned, it should be prepared for, and then it should be acted on in that order. Anything that you do that way is going to go better than if you just said, I'm dragging stuff up to the cloud. You just grab a server and drag it up there and go, okay, does it work? That's a dangerous thing. If you're planning a vacation, if you're figuring out how to lay out the offices in your credit union, or if you're moving stuff to the cloud, you need to strategize, plan, prepare, and then execute. And that's a very important process. That's something we help organizations with all the time. And I believe it is one of the reasons why Envisant is partnering with us and working with us. And we appreciate that. And because we can deliver that to credit unions. What questions do you ask if you don't handle all this internally? What do you ask of your managed service provider? A common misconception of IT companies is that, well, if they have the word IT in it, they handle all IT, everything, all technology. And I'm going to profess that that's not really possible. Skill sets within providers have hills and valleys. They have ways that you should leverage organizations like ours or any other organizations where we're very strong and very powerful, and then places where we don't have a lot of experience. And so some relevant questions for your managed service provider or even your internal IT team are what cloud platforms are you familiar with? Because sometimes, whether it's Azure, AWS, Google, where you should host your services and information, part of that should be balanced against, well, what can the people that I know and interact with actually work with? Because that has a major impact on how impactful that service can be or how painful it can be on the flip side. So what are you familiar with? But even then, these systems are absolutely massive. These ecosystems, they are not just, oh, it's just email or it's just files. It is every possible part of technology you can, operational technology you can imagine, all over the place, thousands of systems within this single ecosystem. And so there needs to be an understanding of what services within these ecosystems are you familiar with? And do you provide implementation of and support of, maintenance of, administration of those things? That's an important consideration. We cover a wide breadth of services within Azure and other cloud platforms. Do we cover 100% of ecosystems? No. There's not an organization that could. And anybody that says they can is either has this much knowledge across something that wide, or they're lying to you. And so very important consideration there. You need to make sure that your business needs align with the skill set of the team that you're interacting with. Next thing you need to ask is the cloud provider. Do the services that you offer align with my business needs? Similar question. That's a very important consideration and something that gets overlooked a lot of the time. And something that happens when things get moved into non-aligning services is they will twist and bend services to try and fit the business need and use it in an outside of design type method. And it becomes very failure prone and very painful. And so you need to make sure that the cloud environment you're leveraging can service against your business need. You will also need to ask the vendors and application providers of your software, can your software, your application run in a cloud environment? Can you run in something like Azure? And what they'll likely give you is a list of specifications. If they say yes, they'll say yes, but you need to do it ABC way. And that's a very important piece of information. A lot of times you can't just what they call lift and shift servers up into Azure or services into 365 and expect them to work with existing third-party applications. It requires communication, collaboration, again, strategy, planning, preparing, and then implementation. So there we go. So there's some important questions you can ask. And another question actually that's coming to mind you can ask of your managed service provider, this is an important one, is what kind of continuous education do you go through? How do your people learn? These systems are changing every day. My role here at Pure IT is a solution strategy person. That's a fancy word for sales engineer. And so I help companies strategize what solutions and products can actually help them, and then develop statement of work and help get things moved and sold and actually actioned on. I spend an hour to an hour and a half a day, maybe even 2 hours some days, amending my knowledge about these systems and staying up to date, staying, just at the top of my game knowledge-wise. I implement in a playground in the background. I have tenants in 365 and AWS and Azure that I'm constantly learning in, because that's what we have to do to stay relevant, because old things get deprecated yesterday, new things get implemented tomorrow. And if you're not up to date on stuff, you're constantly falling behind. And that has a direct impact on your organization. The members of our management team and the members of our implementation team do more of it than I do. And really, really powerful people. Very important question. All right. If you have coffee, you're still awake. And if you have any questions, I would love the opportunity to answer them for you right now.
This was very informational, Stephen, very thorough. And for especially, we've always talked about technology and how it's hard for a lot of people to understand who don't have a background in technology. So this was very, very simple to understand, and like you hit it on perfect. It was.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any questions? I don't see any questions in the chat box. But I've been mentioning throughout the whole session, if you have any questions, use the Q&A. If you think of something later on, we'll also share the recording with you and the contact information of the team. So feel free to reach out directly to them. You can also reach out to us at Envisant, and we'll make sure the message gets forwarded on to the right people. So great session. Thank you again for taking the time. Really looking forward to hearing from everyone.
I really appreciate everybody's time and attention. Thank you very much. And if you have questions, reach out to Envisant, reach out to us. We're happy to answer and happy to support however we can, even if it's just answering some questions.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.